This guy does it, it feels like every single game. Look at him, he looks up right here, boom, right over the top. How about the athleticism? Stays on his feet and out of bounds. First and goal, Wolverines.
He'll give it to him, touchdown, Wolverines.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Michigan-Ohio State postgame. I'm Dennis Fithian, joined by former Michigan linebacker Jim Scarcelli. You see him there on the screen. Michigan wins this game 42-27, and here we are. They're still at the stadium. We're ready to go here. And, earlier this week, Jim, you picked Michigan to win this game, and here you are. They went out there and did it.
Very emotional for me, Denny. Very emotional. Even though I played such a long time ago, when you're Michigan, man, you're Michigan for life, and you live and die with these kids. You want them to win. You want them to have the success that I was able to be a part of. And when I'm watching that game, I see Jim's my teammate and my buddy, man. And so many thoughts are going through my head of all these people that keep beating them up. And honestly, not enough Michigan people to go to his defense. And I'm so happy for him. But it's a total team effort. But I look at that staff. I see Jim. I played with Jim. I see Doug Mallory. I played with him. I see Ron Bellamy. He's a former Wolverine. And I see Michael Hart. There ain't no one wanted to see those kids win more than those guys because they got a ring on their finger. And they know how much that means. But this game was won. You can talk about clocks and put red paint all over the place, whatever you want to talk about. This game was won 4 days ago with all of our preparation. You know how many plays we ran in this game that we haven't run all year? Statue of Liberty. There were so many things that we did that were for these guys. We saved it for these guys. So, anybody wants to say we don't emphasize this game is crazy. Because there's a lot of things that we did that we saved for this team. But the crowd was outstanding. The crowd was a factor. The crowd created penalties. The Michigan fans were huge. And I was right about their defense, Denny. That ain't a great Buckeye defense, but our guys played on offense. Gaddis called it one of his best games ever. Our players executed. I'm just fired up, man. You go ahead and you talk for a little bit.
Well, I just want to keep peppering you with questions. First one I was going to ask you is how they got it done. And, you were going through it a little bit there. And I don't know, when did you know? Like the first series, Michigan comes out, 10 plays, 75 yards, almost 5 minutes. A.J. Henning takes it in 14 yards, and Michigan's up 7-0. I mean, you couldn't have asked for anything better the way they came out and took the ball right down the field.
Denny, it wasn't so much that we took it right down. It's how we took it. I knew – I don't want to say I knew we were going to win, but I knew we were going to move the ball within about 4 or 5 plays because I could see how our offensive line was moving them off the ball. We were latching on and driving them and moving them. And it wasn't going to get any better for the Buckeyes. When I saw that, I knew we were in good shape because that's all technique. That's all weight room. That's strength training. That's, and they were in conflict. Gaddis had them in conflict. So our guys were able to come off the ball. But it was a beautiful mix, man. Offensively, the play calling was outstanding, and our players executed, and our backs ran hard. Our receivers made good catches when they had to make good catches. The great catch by Kojo. I got to say this: the one mistake we made all game was the interception. And you know what went through my mind? Dan Orlowski, because there were 2 safeties sitting there. And he tried to jam it in there. Remember how he was ripping on our guy to make that throw a couple weeks ago, and he dumped it off. And I was thinking, God, I wish he would have just dumped it off like he did before. But that was the only mistake he made all game. But it was just like we talked about, or at least hoped would happen. Would be that our offense would control the ball and grind 5-6 minutes off the clock and lead and finish with touchdowns. And that we could slow them down and keep them to field goals. And a lot of it played out like that.
Michigan gets the win over Ohio State. The final was 42-17, and Ohio State was ranked number 2. first ever win versus a college football top 10 opponent. Michigan was 0-8 entering the game. A lot of that, they had lost 8 straight, 15 of 16 to the Buckeyes. And you've already mentioned Jim Harbaugh, getting his first victory over the Buckeyes. You know what? I don't know, Scar. Sometimes, you get to be prisoner of the moment. You say things right after a game that you don't mean, even in a great win or a big-time loss. But I don't know if I've ever seen Michigan play a better complete game right down the list here. And I don't know, they've won a championship before. They've won the Big Ten, but I don't know if they've had a bigger game in the history. They've been playing football a long time in Ann Arbor, but all things considered, where the program, how much they needed a victory, being able to get it for Jim Harbaugh and everything else, like you think about, what would have happened if they would have ended up on the wrong side. You'd have had to hear it, all off season again, and none of that. They get the sweet taste of victory here, which is. I don't know, got to be a little bit shocking. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it's shocking to you, Jim, but, somewhat shocking to the college football world just because it hasn't happened in a long time.
You know why this is a big win, Danny? I mean, it's big in a lot of ways, but recruiting. This is a big game for recruiting. It's a big game to change the narrative. Right now is the time that all the Michigan guys that are in the media, they need to go and tell Paul Feinbaum how they feel. We need to stand up because any negativity about our coach in the media hurts recruiting. It hurts Michigan recruiting. And we need our guys to stand up and put a positive voice out there about the direction of our program, because it's going to do nothing but help our recruiting. The only way you can beat Ohio State on a regular basis is you got to put dents in their recruiting, because we just proved today we can outcoach them. Because believe me, they got players over there. They got great players over there. And this was a program win. Our players outplayed them. Our coaches outcoached them. Our strength coach outlifted them. But it's very important that we change that narrative, that our guys start defending our coach more in the media, and it can only help recruiting.
You mentioned the one point where you thought it might have been a negative play. It was the interception right there on Michigan's. They had a 24-yard. They actually, got the ball on Ohio State's 39 because they had them pinned back all the way to the 4. I don't know what special teams was pretty big in this game. I don't know what Ohio State was doing down there. They got pinned inside their own 5. They were 3 and out. They punted it. Michigan got it on the 39. They hit Roman Wilson for 24 yards, and then you're talking about throwing it into double coverage. So that was some adversity. But I wanted to ask you, instead of going, play by play and series by series, was there a moment in this game where you looked and you thought, wow, there were a lot of impressive things, but was there one thing that stood out where you're like, you know what, Michigan's really doing something here today? Because I have something in mind myself. Is anything jumping out to you necessarily where you'd say, hey, this is, that was impressive how they did it?
When I looked at it from a defensive standpoint, we were able to get pressure with 4. And a lot of it was through scheme. It was different players coming, different players rushing. So getting adequate pressure, it wasn't the best, but it was adequate. Getting adequate pressure with 4. And let me say this, there was a lot of things we did defensively we hadn't done in a while, but tackling well in space was another big thing. They got their first score off a great play. Our guy was all over him. But if I was to say defensively, the two good things, we were able to get some pressure with just 4. We tackled decently well in space, as well as you're going to do with that kind of as skilled as they are. And then offensively, we were able to get movement, and the play calling was brilliant. And our players secured the ball. Our quarterback made one mistake. He made one mistake pass all year. That was probably the only pass he threw all year that was a really he wished he had it back. But we moved the ball on offense. We moved their defensive front. We put their defense in conflict. And Hutchinson was huge too, man. I'm looking at one of your somebody calling in here. Hutchinson was outstanding. Not only did he get pressure, he was responsible for probably 3 penalties. Again, people holding him. And the kid play. I'm so happy for him to come back I'm happy for all the Michigan guys, but especially he wanted to come back and win this game, and he was a huge factor in this game.
He was, and the other player that Antoine mentioned there was Hassan Haskins, not too shabby himself. Michigan clinching the first Big Ten championship game appearance. They started this thing back in 2011, and they're headed to Indianapolis. So you say things, and the world's their oyster right now after getting this victory. To me, I look, they go in with a 1-point lead at the half. To me, there was the interception, but I was thinking this was going to be a fourth quarter game. And if Michigan could be within one score, I would be happy. You make some plays in the fourth quarter. So being up one at the half, I was all right with, but they come out in the second half, they get a 3-and-out, and Josh Ross makes a great play on the third down. And then, Corum, who looked like he re-aggravated his ankle there. He had a first down run. He went for 55 yards, and then Haskins took it in. That was very impressive. But they came out, and you mentioned Hutchinson. There was some holds and some false starts, and Hutchinson had a sack. There was just 5 plays there, and then Michigan and Josh Gaddis. There was Donovan Edwards had a one-handed grab. J.J. McCarthy came in and hit, I think, maybe the best pass of the game, a 33-yarder, down the right sideline. Then they had a flea flicker. It was that was an amazing, you sit around and say, behold, some of the play calling and when things are working. But I sat back and was like, man, Michigan's emptying the playbook here, and they're just executing. And, these guys are making plays. Donovan Edwards, that's a tough, reaching out with one hand, grabbing it out in front of him when he's got guys staring him down to make that play in the cold, pull it in. And, that was an amazing drive to me, Scar. And Michigan ended up going up 28-13 there.
Yeah, that was a beautiful drive because a lot of it was on the ground. But what went through my mind when the Ohio State kid went up to make that great catch over our guy who was covered, and then
Garrett Wilson, right?
Yeah, and then Kojo makes the great catch. That was a beautiful throw by our quarterback, and Edwards makes the catch. Remember, I told you in our pregame leading up to this game, who's going to make plays? Which team is going to have more guys make big plays in this game? Not against Northwestern, not against Maryland when we're up 40. Who's going to do it against these guys? And our guys did enough. But, yeah, that was a beautiful catch by him. And, it balanced out who was making the great plays. But I don't know where to go. Our kicking game, let's talk. You want to talk kicking game? Some things I saw real quick.
Let's do it. We went back all the way to the first quarter where Ohio State made a mistake, fielding a punt inside the 4 there. So let's go from there. What else did you see there?
Yeah, that was, again, that was a mistake that could have led to more points. We ended up throwing the pick there, but again, that's where we're keeping score, right? Everybody wants to talk about how's the game going to be decided, but that was a mistake they made. But our punt return was good. Henning gave us good field position. He dropped one again, but he's able to recover it. But he gave us good field position on a couple punt returns, and our kick return gave us good field position. That changes everything. You start on the 35, 32-yard line opposed to, the 20, 25. That's one less first down you got to make. What
I like, Scar?
Pardon?
You know what I liked?
What's that?
I liked Jake Moody, 6 for 6 on extra points.
Yeah, that's how the kid's been nothing but great all year. Great all year, Jake Moody. How can you? That's your all-conference kicker. Our long snapper, and outstanding all year. But our special teams definitely was solid. Players and Jay Harbaugh was solid all year, and it was a non-factor in terms of a negative thing for Michigan.
Well, there had been a lot of talk this year where Michigan's, their offense, you looked at some of the numbers, their efficiency was pretty good, but their red zone touchdown efficiency was not very good this year. But today it was great. They scored every time they had it. There was no settling for any field goals. And, people say that. Sometimes you come away with points. It's good. You give the offense, a pat on the back. But they didn't need any of that. I mean, they punched it in. And, that's huge in this game here. I'd have to say, nervous about Ohio State's offense with their trio of wide receivers and C.J. Stroud. He's an excellent quarterback. He made a lot of plays just to keep him in there. But the thing about Michigan's offense, they just kept putting their foot on the gas. They got that lead 21-13, came out in the third quarter. They went to that drive that I've talked about with the flea flicker and emptying the playbook there, 28-13. They continued not to look back. Instead of trying to milk the clock or anything, they just kept going and scoring touchdowns. But, Scar, to that point there, I'm charting the plays in the fourth quarter, and a lot of people say, well, you just don't want to sit on the ball and run it because that's, playing into Ohio State's hands. I don't know how many throws Michigan had in the fourth quarter because I'm looking at it. They came out with their first drive in the fourth quarter. It went 9 plays and 66 yards. 8 of those 9 plays were runs. And then when they got their second possession of the fourth quarter, when they got it on their own 37, it went 5 plays, 63 yards. Those were all runs. So I'm going to add it up really quick here for you. You've got 14 plays, 13 of 14 plays in the fourth quarter, all runs by Michigan in this game. They only threw 1 pass in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we didn't have it because we didn't have to throw it because we were able to run the ball. Look, the foundation of Jim Harbaugh's beliefs offensively is to run the tight ends and the power stuff. But he's added the spread stuff to his mindset. We've got the power stuff. We've got the spread stuff. Getting back to your short yardage, your red zone, why we've had more success, I believe because they made a decision. Hey, we're going to open it up more down here. We're not going to be predictable. We'll throw on first down if we have to on the 9-yard line. So I think that's a huge reason why we had more success. And our offense, listen, bottom line, Denny, what we do offensively is going to help us in that 4-minute offense when you got to run the clock. It's going to help us win that short yardage. And the weakness of what Ohio State and these spread guys do is when they get to the 10, 15-yard line. Now you got to run the ball. Now that's a weakness of what they do. But I'll tell you, which was something I really liked, and you got to look close. The average guy isn't going to see it. But when J.J. McCarthy was in the game, we just simply hand the ball off. You got to watch the backside defense when they're away. They're all honoring J.J. There were 3 guys honoring quarterback keep. The Gus and Joel, they don't see it. They'll be the first one to rip on the coach because this kid's in the game. Believe me, some of those runs that ripped in there, when he's in the game, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad he played them. And then Gaddis had a couple predetermined runs with JJ that we haven't run all year. We have not run those plays all year. They saved them for these guys. They saved them for the Buckeyes.
Well, Scar, I'll jump in there because you know what? You even after the Michigan State game, you were adamant, like you still liked, McCarthy coming in. And I was saying, look, they got him the experience, they got him the time, but, now's the time to win the Big Ten. I wanted to see him just go with Cade McNamara against Penn State. I didn't want him looking over his shoulder or anything else. And they didn't play McCarthy out there against Penn State. But you doubled down coming back against Ohio State. I figured they'd probably put him in against Maryland, but I wanted to go with the same kind of game plan, at least at the quarterback position, that Michigan had against Penn State. I didn't want to see McCarthy out there, but you liked it, and he was a factor today. To your point, he was a factor. He threw the best pass of the game, that 33-yarder that he rifled down the right side. I mean, that's that's a great throw. I mean, that was it was a great camera angle because he made the throw and it was onto the Michigan sideline, and you saw McNamara right there, and he was pumped about the throw too. That was pretty awesome. So you were right about that. Give me some other things here, Scar, some individual players. I mean, you mentioned Hutchinson right off the jump. We've talked about Haskins. Those are the 2 guys. Are there some other when there was some really good tackling? That was one of your points earlier this week that Michigan had to tackle in space. And now Travion Henderson slipped a couple, but I thought coming right out in the third quarter, Josh Ross got in there. and got into the backfield, kind of hurled himself in there, got a hold of Henderson and dragged him down. That was huge for a 3-and-out right off the jump for the defense in the second half. He's one person that I would point to. Jalen Harrell would be another at linebacker. He had a number 32. He had a big stick in the first half. And I also had Donovan Jeter, big 95, at nose tackle. He was in there, jumped into the backfield, and had a big TFL for Michigan in this game. Those were a couple that jumped on. Anybody else that you want to point to, an individual player here that you liked in this game?
Yeah, you make a good point about Ross, but Coach, Denny, that was a blitz. Coach called it, but he executed it. It's one thing to call it. It's another thing to find the hole and make the tackle. But I'll start with the D-line. Hutchinson was outstanding. Ajabo gave us some good pressure also. The interior guys, Hinton and Mozzie, initially they got pushed around a little bit. That always happens sometimes as a football player. You don't quite realize how good a guy is or how low he's coming off the ball. And I think they got knocked around early on, and then they adjusted. They got a little lower. They played a little better. But I thought Mozzie and Hinton were solid as always. And you're right about Jeter. Him and Welshoff, them guys have been nothing but outstanding as solid backups all year. And Jeter had one play. He could have made it a good play on a run. They ran in there for about 10 yards. He missed them, but he did a good job otherwise. So our defensive line, the rotation of our defensive line, and that's Coach Sean Nua. We haven't talked about him, Denny. Guy's a good coach. I've watched him coach. He's a damn good coach. Okay, and who hired Sean Nua, Denny?
Jim Harbaugh?
Damn right he did. Okay, and who? I'm gonna keep going. Our secondary was solid. Again, tackling in space.
I think the secondary was more than solid, Scar. You know what? The touchdown you mentioned earlier, Garrett Wilson, that Stroud threw in there. I mean, he goes up. I don't care if you're, Charles Woodson in his prime might have had a difficult time with that one, with the ball placement and the catch. That was tremendous. This Jackson Smith, the Jigba, he caught a few balls out there. The one, I've seen guys catch him one-handed, but he was, I don't know if you could tell, he was kind of like contorted.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was a 3rd and 17. I was a little bit worried when that happened that, some really crazy things are happening here to Michigan. 3rd and 17, the guy's catching a ball that I've never actually seen anybody catch one like. They replay inconclusive there, and then they get in there and score. But you know what? The offense coming back, they just they were not going to be denied. And before I go over some, I'm looking at some of the numbers here that jump out. The secondary here, Jamon Green got hurt, and DJ Turner, number 5, came in a couple games ago, and he has been, he's been awesome. The coverage, even the plays that he was giving up, I mean, he was right in their back pocket. And I would say the same thing to Vincent Gray. There were a few plays in there. I mean, he's right in there. Sometimes you just have to credit good offense, or great offense is going to, I think, beat great defense. You know where you're going. You can be right on them, and yet still to be able to come up with some of these catches that those guys did were amazing. So I would give 5 stars to Vincent Gray and to DJ Turner, how they played at corner today. I thought they were fabulous.
Yeah, they were outstanding. Let me also say this to you, Denny. When you say, they convert that 3rd and 17 or 4th and whatever the heck it was. But you know what? These kids don't know or give a damn what happened 6 years ago against these guys. They're playing, they're confident. But the big thing, and I talked about our scheme, how it doesn't put a ton of pressure on these guys. It's mixed up enough where the offense doesn't know if you're in man or if you're in zone. And no one was left, out by themselves. But yeah, the coverage was good. The tackling was good. And what else do I got in our secondary?
I thought Hawkins has been really good all year long. And, when he left last game with whatever it was, an ankle injury or whatever it was, he got nicked somehow. Having him back in there, he's been really good all year long. Of course, he made the big play at the end of the Nebraska game to seal it, coming up with that strip. But you look at some of the advanced metrics. Pro Football Focus said he's the best safety back there in coverage and what he's been doing. And so to have him back there, you know, he was in a number of different plays too. Those guys were flying around. I'd say, you know, you don't do this often. And, you know, there was a lot of teeth gnashing last night when we saw that the one referee was the guy back in 2016 that got the gold pants and was a big Ohio State fan. All these Michigan fans were, and I understand, freaking out saying, how can this guy get out there? You know, because, you know, Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel, the athletic director, you know, they were up in arms about, you know, the officiating, and people were like pulling out these guys' resumes and saying, hey, how does a guy that was born in Ohio and, you know, professes their love for Ohio State, how are these guys, you know, able to officiate the game? So there were a lot of issues there, but I'll tell you what, there were, you know, Aiden Hutchinson, they were having a hard time stopping him, whatever they were doing with him. 78 was dragging him down and putting his arm on him. And they started calling it. I don't know if Jim Harbaugh came out and said, look, you're going to start calling this, you know, 78's tackling 97 every single minute. You know what? They started calling it.
Yeah. You know, Denny, another thing, though, that I don't know that everybody realizes, when you look at stopping Ohio State, most people would say, you know, they've got these great receivers. They got this quarterback. You got to stop this pass game. You got to stop this pass. But you have to start with the run game. You have to start with making sure you can, you know, minimize the run game. And we did a great job. I don't know what your stats say, but I believe we did a great job defending the run. They never got the fast freshmen going. They never got those guys really up and going. And we took that part of the game away. I want to say this too, is what we saw, Denny. Everybody improves, man. Late in the game there, you see the Michigan defense all screwed up. We're not lined up right. And I'm just thinking, oh, no, here we go. Here we go again. Bam, timeout. We called timeout instead of getting misaligned and letting them score like we did up in East Lansing against those guys. So I was happy to see, because that happens as a coach. You don't always get the right personnel. You don't always get the right adjustment. Sometimes they ran something, they come out in something you're not prepared for, and it creates confusion. And sometimes it's okay to burn a timeout. So I was happy to see that because that's, you know, we just can't keep learning from we got to learn from our mistakes.
Travion Henderson, the freshman back, the 5-star, they kept throwing up his numbers over there. As good as Mo Claret since 2006, and he surpassed him in touchdowns, but 17 carries, 74 yards. That is, I would say, holding Travion Henderson in check. He had 54 yards receiving out of the backfield, but yeah, just 74 yards there. And then you just flip it on the other side. I mean, this is, if, you know, they're not apples to apples, but if we're talking about the running game, on the other side, Hassan Haskins had 169 yards, 28 carries, 169 yards, 5 touchdowns. And Blake Corum with his 6, you know, he had a 14.5 average. He just had the ball 6 times, but 87 yards. That one drive was all Blake Corum, and that was Michigan's first drive in the third quarter. They get the ball at their own 19. Corum runs over the near side, first down, and then they ran him over to the left. There was great blocking in there, but he kind of weaved through 55 yards. And then Haskins took it from there from 13 yards, but that was a way to make a statement coming out in the third quarter. 3 and outs. They ran the ball down their throats. And the more we talk about it, the more the ground and pound game. I got to go back to Josh Gaddis in the before the season started. You know, they were asking Gaddis about what's going to be different. What about speed and space? And Josh Gaddis said, we want to get back. And it sounded like a total cliche Michigan kind of like he's just throwing it out there as a coach. He said, look, we want to get back to running the ball. And we want to be a good running team. That's where our strength is. And I thought, well, you know what? He's just saying that. I mean, that just sounds like coach speak. But you know what? We saw it against Washington. What did they have? I have it written down. 345 yards, 55 carries. And, I was saying, hey, they're going to have to show a little bit of the pass game along the way here. But the more I look at these, the numbers, and they made a few plays in the second half. It was the ground game that just came out and won this game for Michigan, or it was one of the big factors. I know, Scar, you always say it's not one thing, but man, it was a huge plus being able to run the ball like they were.
Oh my God, yeah, beautiful. if I'm playing defense and that's the greatest gift you can get is control the ball and score, control the ball and score. And, again, I want to compliment the offensive coaches because sometimes Jim and his philosophy, he loves the power play so much where we block down and pull the kick out and block down and kick out. And that's the foundation of what he wants to run. But we had huge success, Denny, running the ball with the zone play. Corum's big run was a zone. And then we had a lot of success where we bring our tight end in motion and kind of lead them through like a fullback. We used to call it the isolations. Some people call it the lead play. We probably ran that about 3 times with 86 Schoonmaker leading. He's a heck of a blocker leading through on that play. And that play was good to us. So sometimes the defense is so zeroed in on stopping your best play that our other plays were the ones that we were ripping them on.
All right. Let's take some of the and look at some of the feedback here that's coming through. We did have one. Antoine's peppering us with feedback. He says when Ohio State was trying to make their fourth quarter comeback, I wasn't worried because they couldn't stop Haskins at all, and they were selling out to stop him. You got a thought there?
Yeah, there definitely was a sense of confidence that even though they scored to make it an 8-point game, that offense on that Michigan sideline, they had to believe that they were confident because they pushed them around all game. I mean, we've been pushing them around. They weren't stuffing us. They were doing nothing to say, you know what, Michigan's in trouble. So I agree with them. I would give more credit to the overall Michigan players, coaches, not one guy. It's never one guy because our line was blocking very well. There's very few mental mistakes we made offensively with our line blocking. Our scheme was good. Our players executed it. And yeah, Haskins is the guy that is tough. And if there's ever a training guide, we always, as coaches, we always have a training manual, training film about always getting the extra yard, falling forward. He is definitely it. But again, that's no surprise considering his coach. By the way, who hired his coach, Denny?
Who hired
the running back coach?
That would have been Jim Harbaugh.
That's right. That would be Jim Harbaugh, the guy that everyone wants to rip. So he had the vision to go out and hire the best running back coach in the country. It was a factor. It was a factor all year, the way we secured that football and the way our backs ran.
Well, you know what? If you would have told me entering the season that Michigan was going to, how are they going to win the Big Ten? Well, they're going to come out and, they're going to rely on a 1-2 punch with Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, and this is going to be the number 1 rush team in the country, and they're going to grind Ohio State into the ground, come November 27th. I'd have said, you know what? I think they're going to have to do a lot more passing than what you're talking about here. But, that was their identity. And you know what? I think people were doubting. They were. I don't think they were doubting Cade McNamara heading into this game here today. And look, in a lot of ways, look at what Ohio State was able to do to Michigan State last week. And I know Michigan State's secondary, isn't like Michigan's, but I think that put a fear into a lot of folks who saw what happened last week with Ohio State. So, I mean, really, all credit goes, I'm writing down at some point into the fourth quarter, what I like, just to give you some impressions, Scar. And I like the tackling. I liked the coverage by the secondary. I love the pass rush. We just talked about the 1-2 punch with Corum and Haskins. What about the quarterback here, Cade McNamara? What did you see from Cade back there, number 12? Who ends up getting this win? You always wondered, who was going to be the signal caller. If there's one thing over the last, 16, 17 years, why Ohio State had won 15 out of 16, people ask me that a lot, Scar. And I know you don't like to just point to one thing. I was pointing to one thing. I was saying it was the quarterback play. Today, you get Cade McNamara goes out there, and he ends up 13 of 19 for 159. Doesn't throw a touchdown and has the 1 interception. But what did you think of his play?
Same thing we've been getting all year. The kid's smart. He's a winner. If you're in the huddle with him, you're confident. I know what it is to run in front of 100,000 with Jim Harbaugh as my quarterback. Even though I played, there's a sense of confidence. I guarantee you that offense, when they look at him, they know he's in the huddle, they're confident. But what I see is an accurate kid, a smart kid, very few uncatchable balls. He threw dimes today. So I'm a big fan. He played good enough to win. One mistake is all he had. But Danny, I'm going to go through the offense real quick. I'm going to tell you why I think our offense was good this year and why I think we won the East Championship. I'm going to start with our center. Smart kid. He's better. He's more athletic. Strength coach. I'm gonna promote our strength coach because Vistardis is a better player athletically. I watch him move. He's better than he was last year. Our guards, we played 5 of them in there. They're all better. They're a bunch of them are back. We had seniors in there. Our 2 tackles. The reason we're better too, those guys are both back, and they played much better than they did last year. Danny, sometimes people get into, sometimes it's just a matter of a guy being a year older. And again, they're running that scheme for so long. And our receivers were outstanding. We lost Ronnie Bell, but I hate to tell you, we had a lot of great guys that stepped up in there, and we really didn't miss them. There's a lot of young, good receivers there that are made plays, and they gave our quarterback some separation. I was worried about separation today, because I know how good that Ohio State coverage is. And look at Alls. Look how much he improved. And Schoonmaker. You remember when Alls couldn't catch a pass? Everybody was down on him. And Harbaugh supported him. Hey, you're going to be a great player. That's a sign of a great coach. That kid's had a great year. The coach believed in him, and he got stronger. That kid's going to be he's going to play a lot of football. And, of course, our running backs. We had, great stable of running backs. So all them guys got better, and I think the play calling and the whole scheme, and having been in it for 3 years. But, again, I can't emphasize enough. There was a bunch of plays, Denny, that we had not run all year. So, again, people can talk about putting clocks, countdown clocks, and all this other stuff. But as a former player, when I line up against Ohio State, if the coaching staff ran some Ohio State stuff to get me more comfortable in this game, that's a hell of a lot more important than some countdown clock.
Yeah, that is Jim Scarcelli. I'm Dennis Fithian as we talk about this game here. Michigan beating Ohio State. And, for people that are watching here in the postgame, there he is. Jim Scarcelli played for the Wolverines, number 85 as outside linebacker. You'd be in this scheme, you'd be like Hutchinson and Ajabo, right, Scar?
Yeah, but we used to drop our outside backers a lot more than they do. In fact, Ohio State caught us a couple times when those guys are in coverage. Those guys are a lot bigger and heavier than I was, but I played on the edge. I was responsible for contain most of the time, very similar to what they do. And you realize how important it is to have, good ends that contain, because we did lose contain a couple times today where you see their quarterback getting outside. And as an old defensive end, outside linebacker, that always bugs me. But, our edge guys are good, and we've got some good players coming back. And hopefully they all learned a lot from old 97.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson was fantastic. It was a great scene at the end there too. Fox was sitting on this a nice story with David Ajabo. His parents had not seen him play, and he's from Nigeria. He went to Scotland, and he came over and played football stateside. Ends up coming to Michigan, and he ends up getting a sack there late in the game, and the snow's coming down. He's pointing up into the crowd. I mean. It was a great scene afterwards with the fans coming onto the field. It's like all the way around here. You wait this long, to get a victory like they had today. And the thing that's great, beating Ohio State at any time, any year is great. I remember the first time that I went to a Ohio State game was 93. They won 28-0. Michigan did, but. They had not had a great year. It wasn't to win the Big Ten or anything, but it was a great game, and it was awesome just, going through and beating Ohio State. But, this part right here, there's a shift in college football. Who knows after this year if they're not going to expand to 6 to 8, maybe even 12 teams. And then, the thing about with the name, image, and likeness, how you can get involved in presenting packages to the players or anything, that could be different. So to beat Ohio State with them at their full powers, with how they had been recruiting, you look at the recruiting numbers, however you want to look at it, 5 stars to 4 stars or anything. I mean, Ohio State has Michigan trumped in all of those things when it comes to recruiting, and the way they, of course, had done it on the field. But to get it done with everything on the line, to go to Indianapolis to try to win the Big Ten, Michigan was able to accomplish all that. I think that's it's that much sweeter to be able to get it done with all of those things happening here, instead of trying to get into the playoffs a different way. They get to Indy by beating Ohio State.
Yeah, Denny, man, I was watching the weather report all week, for the last 2 weeks, trying to zero in on what would happen on Saturday, and because I wanted wind and I wanted it cold. And it was like, finally, we got some Michigan football weather. And obviously everybody's going to say the weather's irrelevant, but I like it for what we do. I like it for our offense more than what they do with their offense. Okay. And don't fool yourself. That crowd is a factor. I played on the road in the Big Ten, and it's tough, man. It's a different deal. It's a different deal for your offense. And our crowd was a huge factor in this game. But yeah, Danny, it's just you asked about the locker room, how those guys might have, I'm visualizing, my last game, and we beat Ohio State at the, in the big house, and I remember the tears, man. There definitely were some tears flowing, and getting a chance to sing the victors there after a Michigan win, and those seniors got to look each other in the eyes singing that song. It's very emotional, knowing the hard work they put in to win that football game, and they're going to get a ring on their finger. Everybody on that team is going to get a ring, and that's what helps recruiting big time. Is when a kid walks in, takes a recruiting trip, and Coach Harbaugh got a rock on his finger and say, "Son, you want one of these? You need to come to Ann Arbor."
Yeah, do you get one for winning the Big Ten East, or they got to win it?
Yeah, Michigan will buy him one for this.
Okay, I'm all right with it. What? They deserve I feel like they deserve some jewelry for that victory today. I'm all about it. I haven't started talking about the Big Ten championship game or Indy or the college football. Those things, 4 hours ago, I wasn't even considering any of that stuff. So, to even start thinking about, wow, hey, here's how you get to Indy. You go to 94 to 69 there, and straight through to Coldwater. You're down there in Indy. It doesn't take you that much time at all. Here's a couple of things that Jim Harbaugh had to say after the game. I'm looking at the Athletics' Nick Baumgartner's Twitter feed. Here's Jim Harbaugh. He said, they thought they saw a ghost. They didn't. It was number 25, Hassan Haskins. Jim Harbaugh was asked to rank this win for him at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh says, well, feels like the best one. Let's see. We've got more here. Harbaugh asked if he has thoughts on the trash talking from Ohio State, notably in recent years. Here's what Jim Harbaugh had to say. Some people were born on third, and they think they hit a triple. There you go. I'm looking at a picture of Brad Hawkins and a big necklace with a block M. I'm not sure if that's like a turnover chain or not. I'll see if I can if we can see that chain. Or not.
Okay.
I call that like a Run DMC, but for a younger crowd, they might not know who that is, but I think they might. Come on. Yeah. So there it is, Scar, 42-7. One of the greatest games that I've seen Michigan play with, certainly, against Ohio State. They come to mind from 97 to, the upset in 96 to the upset in 95. There were some former Michigan players that I was talking with today. Said, don't call it an upset. It's not going to be an upset if Michigan wins today. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, they're 8.5. I think the the line dipped a little bit today. Maybe there was some late money coming in there on Michigan, but so I don't know. Like,
well, Danny, when you
rank for you,
when you look at that game, if people say it's an upset or not, when you really look at it, okay, they had some pretty good receivers, maybe a little better than ours as a unit, but not a lot. It was very close. Our tight ends. So when you look at that game and you watch those two teams play, okay, they had a lot of 4 or 5-star kids. Maybe they missed on a couple of those guys. Maybe I don't know. That's their second loss. Maybe they're not as good as people thought. But I didn't see a huge difference in the talent. Our defensive line was solid, as good, if not better than theirs. Comes down to making plays and which coach is going to make the better adjustments. So, yeah, I would not call that an upset because just because of what they've done the week before us.
Well,
last week, putting 42 on Michigan State, everybody, was all okay. Wow, look at that, but.
Well, you already did it once. I mean, you went man-to-man, talking about the units there, but the offensive line was fabulous today. I mean, you don't get the kind of yardage that Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum had without those guys, blown open, wide open, holes like they did. I think of one, down there on the goal line, a couple of times, like you're thinking, all right, this is going to be tough. It's tough sled and everything's shrinking up, man. That offensive line, when they got it close to that goal line, man, they were pushing Ohio State's D-line backwards. I mean, they could smell it in there.
Let me say this to you, Danny. I'm going to tell you something as a football player that people have to understand. The strength of Ohio State's offense is the space. So Ohio State's defense is going to be better at defending the spread offense. You understand what I'm saying? Because they see it all spring. They see it all practice for bowl practices. They see and they have to defend the spread. Okay, guess what? Michigan ain't running spread on the 10-yard line. Now you got to buckle up. Now you got to play tight ends. Now you got to play double team. Now you got to play physical run football. Okay, so that's the weakness of what they do, where their offense hurts them against an offense like us. So there's a pro and con to that deal too. You got it. That's why I like what we're doing on offense, because it helps. Like if we got to play Wisconsin or Iowa, what we do on offense helps our defense, because we get a good physical run game that is blended in with our offense.
By the way, right now, you mentioned Wisconsin, number 14. They are losing to Minnesota right now. It's 3-0, nearing the 4-minute mark to play in the first quarter. When this game got into the fourth quarter and Michigan, Ohio State scored. Remember, they went for it on a 4th and 7. They went for it on a 4th and 5, and Hutchinson just reached up. He missed the ball like by a couple inches. Travion Henderson took it in for a touchdown there. It was a 13-play, 75-yard drive. It pulled the Buckeyes within 8 there, 35-27. I thought that they were going to go for 2 there. I think the chart in the pros, they're always talking about go for 2 there, because then if you need the 2 the next time. But they didn't. They kept kicking extra points. But, Michigan got the ball back when it was 35-27, and they ran 5 running plays and ran it right down their throat. I was watching the game. It was my wife who said, is Ohio State letting Michigan score here, to come back? Because sometimes you do that. You get in like a 3-point game or something, the other team, a 1-point game. And you see guys, no, there was no benefit. Michigan's offensive line had pulverized that Buckeye, tenderized them enough where they were mincemeat. And at the end, that 4-yarder that Haskins walked in, and he did walk in, and at the end, man, he could have put his hand over there and he could have sashayed in. He didn't. He bolted it.
They let him score. They let him score at the end. They let us, because the worst. There was like 2:20 left. And I think they had 2 timeouts left. There was about 2 minutes left, and they had 2 timeouts. We could have ran a couple plays and kicked a field goal and given the ball with 30 seconds. Okay, he chose that option.
To get it back and then get an onside kick.
Yeah, that drive was crucial, though. Right. That drive right there was probably the most impressive thing our offense did all year, was to, bam, they're within 8, and we take it right down and drive it down there with straight up run game. That was beautiful.
15, 6, 11, 27 was the hurdle by Haskins to get it down to the 4-yard line. And then they did let him walk in, there.
Yeah.
Again. Okay. That's
no,
good.
Because now they have a chance to at least get a quick score, and now they still control the ball. They can onside kick and get it back.
That makes sense.
I
don't think they were trying before the 27-yarder. They weren't necessarily trying to let him go down there.
I called it. I texted my buddies about 30 seconds before Joel did. I called it right away. I said that's why he let him score there. Because if we would have grinded out 3 more plays there and kick a field goal, they would have only had like maybe 30 seconds left, down 11.
Good point.
Good
point. When you go through this, well, let's take it back to the beginning here, as Michigan goes into this game here. They come out, they establish themselves right out of the gate with a 10-play drive, and A.J. Henning takes it in. They come out in defense, and establish themselves. They get a 3-and-out right away, and then the offense is looking fantastic. Like Ohio State makes a mistake on special teams. They're fielding a punt there inside the 4, and then Michigan gets the ball in great field position at the Ohio State 39, and a 24-yard pass, and that's when the interception with Cade McNamara throwing into double coverage. And I saw people online saying, "Hey, there's your chance. It's over. You could have been up 14-0." But they, I thought it was important there. They came back and they held Ohio State to a field goal on that next drive, 7-3. Like, you throw an interception and then the offense comes out and Ohio State's offense goes right down the field and scores a touchdown there. That's going to be a little tougher to take, but coming up big there and holding them to a field goal, I thought that was big just in the first quarter.
Yeah, that was, we used to talk about that. We used to call it sudden change. Sudden change is, having to go back on defense, for an interception like that. And it was huge to get them stopped there, to keep them to a field goal. But our defense has been doing that all year, Michigan people have to look back. And obviously, again, our coach made the decision to make a change, but there was no one talking about crossing patterns today, right? No one was talking about that. And I told you if we keep them under 31, I said 31 would be about the most we could give them, right?
Yeah.
And would they get 27, right? 20,
correct.
Yeah. So,
the offense, whether the defense helped them out, and then you get into the second quarter, and that's when you have Garrett Wilson making that outstanding catch, and the Buckeyes actually go up in the game 10-7, and you might be thinking, okay, here you go. But Michigan came out right after that touchdown, and that's when they had a 4th and 1 to Haskins, and that's when they hit Kojo 37 yards, down the right side. I guess that was, that's just a fly pattern on the right side to find him there. A couple plays later, they're going in 12 plays, 62 yards. And, they're going in, making it 14-10 there. That's a big deal. That was a big deal to respond when Ohio State, and they ended up then, holding OSU down to another field goal there. That might have been a lot of times, to simplify it, Michigan scoring touchdowns. Ohio State had to settle for a couple field goals there.
Yeah, I'll give Gaddis credit too. That okay, we go ahead, we throw the pick. He didn't shy away though. He was right away gunning right after we got the ball again, throwing the deep pass to Kojo came not long after that to Cornelius Johnson. So I give him credit for getting right back in the saddle and saying, hey, we're going to sling it, man. We're going to do both. And that was a big deal there. Not shying away, not trying to lock in to be conservative. And let me also say this, Denny, as a former coach, and I want people to understand what we do on offense, what the strength of it is. And when you run this spread stuff, another weakness of the spread, which that's what Ohio State runs, is if you got windy, crummy weather conditions. You remember when Michigan State beat them up there about 5 years ago when it was raining, it was crummy, and anyway, it was just terrible weather conditions. Ohio State couldn't do nothing. You got to have an offense that can score and move the ball in all weather conditions. So when people want to question what we're doing. Our offense is good in all type of weather conditions because of what we do, opposed to, really having problems when it's windy. And I just want to compliment again our offensive philosophy because it enables you to move the ball regardless of weather conditions.
You talked about special teams already. Things that also get talked about when you're playing in big games are turnovers, penalties, and third down conversions. Let me throw some numbers at you here. Michigan was 5 of 8 on third down. Not too shabby. 1 of 1 on fourth down, so pretty good. And penalty-wise, Michigan just had 2 compared to the 10 for Ohio State. Now, did Ohio State get a bad whistle? Maybe on the one where the guy snatched his helmet off because Roman Wilson was tackling him. Those kind of things can happen, especially in a rivalry game. But 78, the false starts, and he couldn't handle Hutchinson, so he had to grab him. And I think that could have also played into some of those false starts over there because you're worried about flinching a little bit because 97's, breathing down your neck. Hey,
Denny, there's, home field matters, man. Home field matters, especially for that tackle lined up across from Hutchinson who might not be able to hear the cadence. He might have to look in at the ball. How'd you like to have to block a guy like Hutchinson where you have a hard time hearing the cadence? So, it gets back to that the fans and the crowd being a factor. I wasn't at the game, but it sounded like it was pretty darn loud there. So, that all matters, man. That all matters. Those penalties are a product of crowd noise in many cases.
Scar, I've just got a picture sent to me, and John wanted you to comment on this particular formation because he said it was his favorite. I don't know if you could see it here at the end.
Oh, yeah.
He calls that victory. He's saying it's victory formation. That was his favorite play of the game. He said that was the best formation in football. Congratulations to the coach on a great victory over OSU. Your staff, the players, dominated the Buckeyes. Enjoyed tonight and get ready to win the Big Ten championship game next Saturday in Indianapolis. Tears of joy, the Big Ten East champions. That's from Big John. Texted me in. We hadn't talked about going to next week in Indianapolis, but that's like you enjoy this one for a day if you're the players. You enjoy this one forever if you're a Michigan fan, but going to Indianapolis, I'll tell you this, Scar, for 3 years when I worked in radio in Detroit, I put in, because you had to do it a month out or at least a couple of weeks before. So I wanted to go to Indianapolis to see Michigan play in the Big Ten championship game. So in 15, I did, in 16, I did it too. And then in 18, I did it too. I put this requested to have the weekend off. And of course it didn't happen. So I didn't go to Indianapolis. I just went to visit my dad. But so here they are. I think there were a lot of people that were kind of the same way, looking to go to Indianapolis. Now you can get your ticket. You can go down there and actually watch the Wolverines play at the Lucas Oil Field. I've been by it a number of times, but I've never been in there.
No, it's amazing that, we've had this drought where, as long as they've been playing it, we haven't been there. And it's, it'll be a great thing for all the Michigan faithful. But mentally, again, this is a challenge for the coach and the players. Okay, again, as a coach, I understand this now. You want a big game, huge game, but guess what? You got to go back and play again now. Okay, you got to go to a neutral site. It might be against someone you've already beaten. Personally, I'd rather have Iowa. I would rather have Iowa if I had my choice, but because I don't like having to play somebody twice, but. Either way, I feel confident, but yeah, it's we're fairly healthy. I don't think they dragged anybody off the field, right, Denny? It looked like we came out pretty good. You got to get mentally ready to play another football game, and that is a real challenge for the coaches and the senior leadership on this team.
Well, if it is Michigan beat them 38-17, but that was a 13-10 game at the half. Graham Mertz got hurt in that game. That was a huge factor in that one. I remember Michigan right off the jump, they're going for it on their own 35 in the first quarter there. But that also was the first time that they'd used the flea flicker. They got Cornelius Johnson that Cade McNamara found him. That was a beautiful play, drawn up and everything and right on the money. And Kojo ended up grabbing that one, especially before, the games before. Yeah, against Northern Illinois, they had a long touchdown. It was Cornelius Johnson again, another, I think it was an 87-yarder, but people were wondering, hey, are they going to be able to make plays through the air? And, they were able to against Wisconsin. But yeah, trying to beat a team twice, I get it. Wisconsin, since the Michigan game, has definitely played a lot better football. They are sitting here still in that 3-0 hole as they get into the first minute of the second quarter, as Minnesota leads Whiskey 3-0. But the Badgers here are threatening and knocking on the door. Have you watched Iowa play at all this year?
Oh yeah, that's why I'd rather play Iowa, because I think I think we can defend them a lot better. I don't see them as dynamic. They're good on defense. Iowa's good on defense, but so is Wisconsin. But I think I'd rather defend Iowa. That's just looking at both of them. And, having played them already is, we had a lot of things went our way. You remember the punt that hits the guy in the foot? And there's a lot of things that happen in that game that, isn't always going to happen. But, hey, we'll play either of them. I'll play either of them and feel real confident in it. But maybe old PJ can row the boat and we get the Hawkeyes instead.
Well, let me ask you another question. I have not paid that much attention to the college football playoff rankings. I think those guys do whatever they want. They've come off as semi-bozos with some of the picks that they made. They may say, "Hey, what are you talking about? We put Michigan in front of Michigan State. Look at it, it's justified." Just a week or so after Michigan had lost to Michigan State, that didn't seem like it was the right way to go. But now I think, you can pay a lot closer attention to those college football playoffs, as Michigan's going to be inside that 4 now after beating OSU. So those teams in there, Georgia, Bama, Cincinnati, you're going to be scared at all? You want to play Cincy somehow. You want to get in, and you don't want to play Bama or Georgia, right?
No, I tell you what, Alabama.
You're not getting one.
Yeah, I've watched all those teams play. Georgia on the hoof looks to be the last team I want to play, because they're just really big, fast, and athletic on defense. Alabama's big, fast, athletic, but I don't think they're as good as they've been in the past on defense. I think, the quarterback is outstanding for a young kid. But of course, yeah, I'd rather play Cincinnati. I watched Cincinnati many times this year. They got Notre Dame at the right time. Notre Dame had just come off Wisconsin. Their quarterback was limping around. They end up with playing 3 quarterbacks in that game. But,
so what are we going to want? You're going to want, so you'd want Michigan to get to 1. If Bama beats Georgia and Michigan beats, let's say, Wisconsin, would Michigan get up to number 1 to be able to play Cincinnati? The other thing, a lot of people are saying Notre Dame's knocking on the door. Is there any way that Michigan can get to 1? If Bama beat Georgia, you'd have those. They wouldn't want those 2 teams playing again in another week. So any way it goes, I think Michigan's going to have to play. Just thinking about this, talking it through, Michigan's going to have to play the Dogs or the Tide. If they win, at least you can talk about it now. I mean,
let me say this, Danny.
Yesterday, you'd say you're putting the cart in front of the horse, but it doesn't feel like I'm putting the cart in front of the horse.
I play Notre Dame. This is a very average Notre Dame team. This isn't as good as the Notre Dame team we played a couple years ago. I don't think this team's as good. I'd play Cincinnati in a minute. That Alabama team, they're nothing like that Alabama team we played a couple years ago. This Alabama team does not have the receivers, the quarterback of what we faced in the defense. This Alabama's they're not as good as that team. Georgia, I'd like to avoid them as long as possible, because I think they've got a good quarterback. They got good running game, offensive
great
line,
defense. Great,
and they're athletic as hell on defense. But there's nobody in there that Michigan can't compete with. Absolutely, we can line up with anybody.
Yeah, so I think if you're a Michigan fan, you want Bama, because you can't get anybody. You're going to have to take on one of those 2, and the only way you'd play Georgia is if Georgia lost to Alabama. So you want Georgia to beat Alabama, then you want Michigan to play Alabama in the college football playoff. I mean, that's real now. Michigan goes to Indy.
But everything we're talking about, just like Coach, I'm going to quote Coach Saban. It's all rat poisoning, man. Danny, it's all rat poisoning because we could have we got the Hawkeyes or the Badgers. So everything else is you got to block it out, just like preparation for Maryland. It's all the same stuff, man. You got to get back. You got to throw all that stuff out. You got to just zero in on the one game on your schedule, block everything out. You know, let's get after the Badgers or the Hawkeyes and forget everything else. So let all them other guys worry about that stuff.
Well, I think the team has to go ahead and block it out. I don't have to block it out.
I get it.
I can talk about it a little
but
bit.
I'm an old coach and player. I know how you got. I'm just telling you the perspective.
I know. I appreciate that. I appreciate you thinking that way. I'm like Aiden Hutchinson wanted to like in the Fansville commercial. He wanted to take the goalposts home and plant them on his front lawn. I like that. I wanted the goalpost to go down, but I don't think they did. I didn't even know you could grab those goalposts out of there. Here's a couple quotes, some more. This one's from Cade McNamara. Now we got to do it every year. We know what it took, and we're not done yet. Aiden Hutchinson talking about the intensity of today's games. These guys have been disrespecting us, stepping on our jerseys, talking about hanging 100 on us. We were about it today. Ooh, I like that quote.
Hey, Denny, I'll tell you a huge thing, too. There were a lot of big-time recruits at this game. Big-time recruits were at this football game. Guys that haven't made their decision yet. So this game was huge. I'm going to tell you another thing about this game. It's the number one game this weekend, and every state in the country, all them kids that we're recruiting, all them high school coaches, well, when our guys go into those schools this year, when they can go back on the road here and recruit again, it's huge. So we might turn 2, 3, 4, 5-star kids now, from today until signing day. And who knows who might flip back our way. But this game is huge for a lot of things. The kids that were at the game. You tell me, if you're a kid at that game and you're thinking about Michigan and you saw 110,000 going crazy and you just beat the Buckeyes and you want to get a good education, where are you going to go to school? Why are you looking at anybody else? You get a great education with great football right here, man.
Yeah, I'm buying in. Here's some more quotes. Hassan Haskins, I tell myself, I'm not going down. I put that in the back of my mind and went out there with determination to win. Cade McNamara on the programs. What are you doing to beat Ohio State today? Message. That's something we kept in the back of our minds every day. I
told you, Denny, I told you that. So is that wording that they had around the football building? They probably had that around the football building somewhere.
In the weight room, I did see a picture in the weight room, like a wallpaper. I don't know if it's called wallpaper anymore. And it said, what are you doing to beat Ohio State today? So they did it for the first time in 10 years, 42-27. They get it done. There's there's the front page of the Michigan Daily, or at least that's it's from the Michigan Daily Twitter page. So there you go. How about it? Well, Scar, you got to give some final thoughts here. If we can taking a look to see if we get a little bit of some Jim Harbaugh here. No, we're good to go. We don't have the coach audio here, but let's make some final thoughts here about this game. Anybody out there? I'll look at some of the comments here. I do want to say one thing. You just think it over here. And this is Saturday, a day after Black Friday. But if you look at the scroll, these are for people that are listening to the podcast. And if you do listen to the TMBR podcast, put a message underneath there, a review, and say, hey, Fithian told me to put a review here. I'm putting a review. I'll check that. I'm looking for a star to write a review over there, and you can go ahead and rate it and do whatever you want. But yesterday, with it being Black Friday and everything, we had a special at the Maize and Blue review, and here it is across the scroll. You can get the Maize and Blue review for $20.21 for the year, You go to michigan.rivals.com. You put in the promo code Rivals 2021, and you go over there if you're new, and you get that annual subscription for that price. And it's a lot of fun. It's great to be in the kind of in the family of those message boards, and it's great. You like scrutinizing, you like living every play, everything going on with Michigan. That's what it's about there. Great community. Scar, I know you do an additional podcast. You want to tell us about that before you give us the final thoughts here?
Hey, Sports Peninsula Podcast is a group of guys that we talk Lions. We talk a lot of Michigan sports, football, basketball. We've been at it for a couple of years. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, but it's Sports Peninsula Podcast. A lot of good stuff, all positive. We're not attacking people. We're just like you and I, Denny, trying to educate and inform and have good, pleasant discussions about sports. But anyway, Denny, my final thoughts are, as a Michigan guy and a former player, and we are just so happy for the whole Michigan family that we've been suffering and going through this. I said how happy I am for Coach Harbaugh, how happy I am for those seniors, because I know what it is to walk off that field a winner. They got to live with that the rest of their life. And our seniors are able to do that. So that means a lot. I know how important that is. And the young guys, they got the opportunity to watch the seniors lead them all year. We had great senior leadership, Haskins, Hutchinson, all those guys. It's never just the captains, Denny. That stuff's overrated. It's all the seniors. They had great leadership there. They did the job in the weight room. This game was won, like I said, 364 days ago. This was put in motion, the plan. The Statue of Liberty hasn't been run all year. There was about a bunch of plays that hadn't been run all year. There's things we did on defense that I guarantee you we were working on in spring practice that we haven't done all year. We saved it for these guys. And they understand, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, they understand how important this game is. So don't let anybody think otherwise. We just finally got it done. Players, coaches, celebrate, but not too much, because we got to get ready for to put a real big ring on our finger, man.
Well, Wisconsin, which was down 3-0, they got, and the Gophers were able to hold them to a field goal at 3-3. But I just watched Minnesota just threw a pick six. So it is now 10-3 Wisconsin. They are up on Minnesota. That game is still in the first half. So it could be Wisconsin, could be Iowa. We'll see. For me, this is a game like a lot of people. If you're just a fan growing up in the state of Michigan, you just gravitate towards it because, they're telling you it's the greatest rivalry ever. And, if you grew up like me in the 70s, you're going to be attracted to Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler and all of that. And it was something, that I was brought up on. And, I get in and start going to the games in the 90s and, 313 yards for Biaka Batuka, Sean Springs, and 13-7, big upset in 96, 97. Being, at that game, I still, talk about that. I could sit around and tell you, I don't care how long I live, it's going to be the greatest game ever. But, the 21st century has been tough, for Michigan fans when it comes to this particular game. Ohio State flipped the script. Scar, I can remember going down in 99 to my first game in Columbus. I was doing radio, and we were set up in downtown Columbus, and I was over there doing impersonations of John Cooper. Michigan had just played 12. They had won 10 out of 12 games, and the other one was a tie. So it was a complete domination by Michigan. And Ohio State fans, the only thing they could say was, we just hate the whole state of Michigan and stop taking our players out of Ohio. That's the only thing. That's the only reason you're winning. You're taking our players. You're taking Charles Woodson. You're taking Desmond Howard. Get out of here. Stop taking our players. And, they flipped the script a little bit. So in the 21st century, it's been, complete misery of this particular game. And with Jim Harbaugh coming in, it was a grand slam hire. I thought that there were going to be a lot of days like this. But you know what? It's making the story as I sit here today, that much sweeter, to go the 6 games and not be able to get it done and even own a couple of those in 16, that short with a spot in 18, I thought that they had a good chance to win that game. And, they gave up 62 points, but, when you're, the absence makes your heart grow fonder here. So to sit here today and finally get there and turn this thing around, man, it's a great feeling, for Michigan fans. I know.
I tell you, Denny, a guy that no one's even thinking about, that is huge, real big, is Big Ward Manuel. I know Big Ward. He's a Michigan man, former player, good guy. He was getting a lot of pressure, man. It's time. We've given it 6 years or whatever it is, and whatever. But Ward stuck with them. They sat down. Jim said, "Look, I got a plan. I got a guy I'm going to bring in on defense. I'm going to go get Michael Hart. I'm going to go get Ron Bellamy. I got this guy. It's Clinksdale, right? Is that how you say him? The defense.
Yeah, Clink.
I'm going to go get him. I got this quarterback coach that worked with me at Stanford, Weiss. I believe that's his name, right?
Yeah.
I got
Weiss.
A name that I haven't mentioned, and we're negligent, Denny, is Sharon Moore. Our offensive line coach is outstanding. We haven't given enough credit to him. He was talking about leaving. He had a lot of people that wanted him, and Jim and Ward, they anteed up and they kept him here. So we had that continuity with a good offensive line coach, and but I give a lot of credit to Ward. I give a lot of credit to Coach to saying, look, I got to make changes. And who do I get? How do I get them here? How do I bring this thing together? And, the players worked harder in the weight room, and they had great leadership, and they were pissed off. I know what it is to have a great year following, having been beaten up and pissed off. That's a good motivation to be pissed off. So all that stuff came together, and Ward is a big part of it. Thanks for having faith in our coach.
Yeah, I'd have to follow that up, Scar. I don't have anything to do, so I could follow this up. When I listen to you talk, going through those coaches there, Josh Gaddis has, had the heat on him since he's come in here, that he was going to open up this offense, and he came in from Alabama, and he was going to be at the controls, and it was going to be speed and space. But, there were a few drives today that he went out there, emptied the playbook, flea flicker, putting in, the thing about putting in J.J. McCarthy, that doesn't work. And, you're going to get criticized, and, you're going to nationally, you're a former coach. I know how things work in the media. When you do something that's unorthodox and it doesn't work, you just right, especially when you're somebody like Jim Harbaugh that's outspoken. People can't wait to jump on you and say, what the heck are you doing, man? You're losing games here for Michigan when you had a chance. So to put McCarthy out there was really bold. And
it was beautiful. Denny, did you hear anything from Gus when he ran that ball down to the goal line? Did you hear anything from old Gus and Joel who were ripping on him at Michigan State? You didn't hear nothing. Crickets, right? They made the right call. They made the gutsy call. They put their defense in conflict. They got to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. It helps. It's good. JJ was good. You didn't hear nothing from Gus. Nothing. But he was ripping on him when we played the Spartans.
Well, he had back-to-back fumbles. So.
I get it. But at the same time, if you're going to – in defense of that deal there, Coach Harbaugh on Monday at the press conference, he put it on the running back. He didn't even blame his quarterback. Remember hearing that? I don't want to keep going back.
Klatt was saying it again today. It's always on the quarterback. That's what he said. I don't know.
That's why you got mute buttons for some certain guys. But anyway, I thought the whole thing was brilliant. Just the whole deal was brilliant in all phases. And we needed to be brilliant in all phases. Players, strength coach, trainer, training table, offense, defense. We needed everything to beat these guys. You can't one little dent in your armor and you get beat.
Yeah, it's a great day. It's a great day for Michigan being able to get this victory. Very sweet. And now they are on as Minnesota. No, incomplete. Giving the play-by-play 10-3, Wisconsin in that game right here. Well, it's going to be a great weekend, and the show continues. It goes on. It's Harbaugh said it this week. He said it a number of times. For the winner, you get to keep playing. It's like the playoffs, and Michigan gets to keep playing. They're going to the Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State. That was Ryan Day's first Big Ten loss. In the first year he lost, remember, he lost to Clemson and Bama, or however it was there, and he lost to Oregon earlier this year. I mean, he had only lost in the playoffs, and so this is his first Big Ten loss. Talk about slaying a dragon there.
You know what, Denny? Let me tell you what I'm hoping. Here's what I'm hoping. That the Columbus newspaper, the Ohio newspapers, they all start pointing fingers, and they start stabbing each other, and the former players come out of nowhere and start pointing the finger at the defensive coaches. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
I want them at each other's throats. I want them attacking each other, because that's the beginning of the end. Okay, because we went through it. That's why I want to pound away at Michigan. People need to be unified, right? The worst thing we can do is have our guys that are in the media, not defend our coach. Well, those guys need to speak up now. But I'm hoping that in Ohio, they start throwing knives at each other, and now Ryan Day is thinking about bringing a new defensive coordinator in. That would be the best thing for Michigan, is to start having chaos and turmoil over there in Columbus. That's what I want.
The one thing you got to remember about the media, it's for entertainment, and they're trying to make money. They're not on like the Michigan or Ohio State payroll, although some of them are. You can say, hey, your job is to entertain and inform listeners or viewers. Now, this particular site that we're working for, it's called the Maize and Blue Review. I mean, going on here and trashing Michigan would be, I still like to call it, try to give a fair opinion on what I'm seeing, or just try to be fair about what's going on. Well, Scar, you can take a little bit of break here. It has just come through. Jim Harbaugh down in Ann Arbor, and this is what he had to say following his team's victory here today. And I'm going to play a little bit of it for you here, if I can get it up. There it is, 42-27. Here's Jim Harbaugh walking up to the podium. Here's your first question to him, and let's hear what he has to say. Here he is.
It says that they were well prepared. Very determined. My favorite saying of all time is, where there's a will, there's a way. And the will was very strong with our team. And the way it feels now just feels like the beginning.
Over here on the left, Larry.
Jim, can you talk about your team's ability to move their offensive line around and to establish and keep going with your running game?
Yeah, it was dominant. It was dominant in the offensive line. No question about it. There was movement, continual movement up front by the guys, and Hassan Haskins. They might have thought they saw a ghost, but they didn't. It was number 25, Hassan Haskins. He was one of great determination, great purpose. Great ability, 5 touchdowns on the day. He ties a school record. He's probably break the season touchdown record before it's over, held by Ron Johnson in 1968. This kind of gives you a glimpse of just how good of a runner Hassan Haskins is. Along with Aiden Hutchinson, along with and not just along, but talk a little bit about Aiden. His performance was also dominant. Single season sack record already. Definitely should be a strong consideration for the Heisman Trophy. One of those two players, Hassan or Aiden, would be our most valuable player. Two guys along with Andrew Vistardis, Brad Hawkins, Jake Moody. There was Brad Robbins, Andrew Stuber, Ryan Hayes. There's a group of those guys that I call them the ones. They're the ones without them, we wouldn't be where we are. So incredible performance again by Hassan, and also Josh Ross would be the 8, and Ronnie Bell. Those 8, I call them the ones. Without them, we wouldn't be where we're at. And so many other guys, so many guys that were committed, didn't flinch, didn't just fold at the slightest whiff of adversity. Just kept going, kept preparing, kept working, and where it shows is in production. Just the way that so many produced.
In the middle, Chris.
What do you say about Mike McDonald's game?
We'll take one more question.
Really good, really good.
There he is.
It was going to be really good at the beginning of the week as he was putting it in, and it was really effective. I said, don't be players, coaches, defense. Don't be discouraged when they make plays, when they move the ball, when they score touchdowns. They're going to. That'll be the offense's job to respond, and our offense did. And the amount of stops today, especially those 2 right after the half, it was really good disguise, really good packages that we made them doubt what they were seeing. They were seeing one thing, but they weren't really seeing that, and it was really effective today.
There he is, Jim Harbaugh following the victory today. He mentions those the 3 and out to start the third quarter, and then Ohio State's second possession there in the third quarter. There was a hold, there was a false start, and there was a Hutchinson sack. It just goes 5 plays. 5 plays in a punt, 3 plays in a punt. Josh Ross coming up on that first series there, defense coming out, and had a heck of a game. They weren't going to stop them every time. They got a 3 and out on the first series there, but defense flying around. As Jim Harbaugh was standing up there, he started just going down the list, and that's really what you do in a game like this.
Denny, you know what he was doing? Every one of those guys were seniors. That's what he was saying. He one of the most overrated things, in my opinion, are the 2 or 3 captains. Okay, I've been a captain before, and I've picked captains as a coach, but it's the whole senior group. And that's what he was mentioning. He didn't mention any underclassmen there. He was letting the team know that these are the guys that set the tone. These guys set the table. They made sure we practiced and prepared hard. They made sure we were paying attention in meetings, that we're on time for everything, and we weren't out partying and drinking and doing stupid stuff. It's the seniors that he was mentioning. And that's what he was meaning there. And he also talked about the scheme on defense, how their eyes were seeing one thing, it was something else. And you and I have been talking about that all year. And again, he was complimenting his defensive coordinator. By the way, who hired the defensive coordinator?
Ward Manuel.
Jim Harbaugh hired the defensive coordinator.
He did. Scar, if I could go, you know what? I sometimes I give a 3 stars out, and sometimes I forget. I don't want to forget. And I think Haskins, he mentioned it, Hutchinson on one side, Haskins on the other. I mean, you get 5 touchdowns, and you have how many ever sacks Hutchinson had, and he's able to be the all-time leader single season. And the game that he had here today, I think I'd put Haskins 1, Hutchinson 2. Who would you put as your 3rd star? I mean, if you agree with Haskins and Hutchinson, who would be your third star of this game. And I know you like to give a star out to all the seniors and you want to run down the offensive line, but if you had to just signal one other person out besides Haskins or Hutchinson, who would you pick?
You know, I would probably say Vistardis. I would say because this game isn't won without that great leadership. He mentioned him. I know he's a captain. The kid's been solid all year. The center. I'm going to mention him because I know everything that goes into winning this game. And the game wasn't won today. It was won in 364 days of preparation. And Jim mentioned his name right away. That's the guy I'm going to mention.
Hutchinson did have 3 sacks. It's hard to keep him off of the star list. And Haskins with 5 touchdowns and 169 yards. I'll give my third star to Blake Corum. He had 6 carries for 87 yards, but he came out in that one drive, and it was all him. He came out and had a first down run to the right side, and then he had that one where he weaved and went for 55 yards. That was Michigan's first series of the third quarter. They ended up taking it down and getting the lead 21-13. I'll say they never looked back after that, and Blake Corum was huge on that drive. Of course, he was sprung by that 55-yarder. Excellent. I think if we went back, and maybe we'll have to do this in the future, Scar, we'll take a look at the line blocking there and just what he did and what he was looking at when he ended up making that run to daylight going 55 yards. But I'll put Blake Corum there as my 3-star.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that played really, really well and made big plays, and that's what it took. You couldn't have average games, and we had a lot of guys that played their best game. And that's something our coaches used to say to me when I was playing in this game. You got to play your best game against the Buckeyes. Everybody has to play their best because an average game isn't good enough, and our guys stepped up.
Do you feel like Michigan they have to validate this by winning the Big Ten, by going out there next week and then just rolling the like I think it feels like that to me, even though this is great win, stands on its own. You just start thinking about completing the task of getting to the college football playoff. Now, if I had to say, we already talked about Alabama, and I know it's putting the cart in front of the horse and everything else. Like I don't think Michigan would beat Alabama or Georgia if they won next week, but it does feel like, it would validate this even more if they were able to go ahead and win in Indy next week. You got a thought on that?
Yeah, I guess validation is a term that, Denny, I just know that, they're going to focus and treat this game, just like the game after Michigan State, the game before Ohio State. You have to be ready to prepare every day, every game, every minute, every practice, every film session, and you got to keep your mind clear and focused. And that's the challenge for great coaching staffs. So, look, if they don't win next week, yeah, it would be a huge disappointment. But it's still, we won the East, but it sure as heck isn't what we were set out to do. So we should have no trouble having great preparation this week.
Well, when you put it like that, the over and under in Vegas before the year was 7.5 for Michigan. I had them going over, but just with 8 wins. And you know how many they have now, Scar?
They've got 11 now, right?
11.
Yeah, and by the way, Denny, just so you know, I told you I like to make a bet every now and then. After the Washington game, I bet the Wolverines winning the Big Ten championship at 750 plus 750.
Whoa! So whatever amount you put on there, you get
That's right.
750 if they win next week.
So every 100 is 750. So I got a bet in. So I need one more win. My bookie is not going to like me.
Will you hedge?
No, I'm not hedging nothing. I'm getting paid. Denny.
Okay. You know what? The Badgers, it's 10-6 right now. Wisconsin, they're still in the first half. That's a real dogfight there. up in Minneapolis. We'll see how that plays out. Well, Scar, it was great talking with you here. Just you and I kicking around this game. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad it came out like it was, because sitting here going over an Ohio State loss would have been, torture. And it's the exact opposite, with a 42-27 win, a game I'll remember forever. So thanks so much, my friend, for being on here and supplying all the information that only you can. We appreciate it.
It's not over, Denny. And I'm going to leave you on 2 words. Go Blue.
2 of the finest words here on this day. Thanks, Scar. We'll talk with you later this week. Good night.